Okay, now we're going to continue on with Excel homework number 4 in our Chapter 2 Excel homework series. And in this problem, let's take a look at what we've got. So we have this company, Penn Company, uses a job order cost accounting system. In the last month, the system accumulated labor time tickets with costs below, and these costs were accumulated in factory payroll as they were paid. So now, remember that within the factory labor, the total amount of payroll for a factory operation, basically, there can be direct labor costs. That would be, individuals working on the actual products, think of working on the product line, creating the thing. And then you've got indirect labor costs, which could be things like the supervisors of those people working on the line, or it could be the janitor or a security guard or something like that. That's kind of supports the process and manages the process, but is not actually, has their, if there's a bakery, it's not the person doing the dough, it's not the one actually making the product. That would be direct labor. But the indirect labor could be supervisor stuff, supervisor salaries, like I said, janitor, security guard, so on and so forth. Okay, so we just need to record a journal entry to allocate or to assign the factory payroll costs. So what we want to do is we want to zero out factory payroll. So I'm going to start with the credit here. And basically what we're going to put here is the total amount. So prior to doing this credit, factory payroll would have had a debit balance of $29,900. So when we do a credit here, to assign these costs, to move those costs into the jobs and into into overhead, we're essentially zeroing out factory payroll, pushing all those costs into the products and making them into assets, essentially, as they become inventory. So there's two components to this. The first one will be work in process, WIP, and this is going to be the direct labor. So the direct labor all goes directly into those jobs. The employees who are working on the line or actually making the products, somehow they're tracking the time that they spend on these different jobs, and that cost all goes into work in process, so that the amount that we pay them for salary then becomes the cost of that inventory, essentially, just directly. And then we've got the overhead costs. So I'm going to say manufacturing overhead, MOH, and that's going to be the other piece of it to balance our journal entry and just to move the portion of that $29,900 in total costs into the left side of the overhead account, right? And remember, when we're doing, this is the actual overhead costs. This is the indirect labor costs that goes into overhead. The amount that we actually apply to the jobs is going to be used in the predetermined rate, and that's what we were kind of comparing, is the predetermined estimated amounts that go into WIP versus the actual amounts it's a total of overhead, of which one component is indirect labor, and that's what we're seeing here, essentially, that little component of what overhead will eventually total up to at the end. Okay, kind of a fast one here, but I think it's a good one just to kind of focus in on how we do these journal entries. We see payroll costs, those are accumulated, and we need to push them out to jobs. And so that's what we're doing. And note that there's a part that goes directly to WIP and to the actual jobs directly. And then there's a part that just goes to overhead that we'll analyze against our estimated overhead costs later. All right, well, that wraps this one up, and I will see you in the next video.